I have like 10,000 likes on social media, but no clients.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Micah Shalansky, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Oh, Micah, just living the dream back at my house here in Vegas after coming back from a motorcycle trip. So excited to get back on the podcast.
Yeah, you had a pretty good or pretty interesting motorcycle trip anyways, right? I love it when equipment works and then not so much when it doesn't.
Yeah, you carry a lot of spare parts, but when your rear brake caliper melts down and explodes on the trail, that's kind of the end of the race. I did think about, Micah, like borrowing, quote unquote, one from another bike, but it seemed like a pretty elaborate process to borrow.
That is a pretty elaborate process, right? So we definitely need the trailer, TPR wrap trailer, obviously. Well, one side maybe Jarvis Financial, the other one is wrap TPR, and kind of put all that thing together with, and just an extra bike is really what you were missing, Jarvis. You just should have had a spare bike.
Yeah, no, that's definitely on my list. I did mention that to my wife that I do need a spare bike, but it was still, I had a fun trip with my buddies. We got to go up to northern Idaho for this race, and some of that's due to surge, right? To being really intentional about when I'm working and when I'm not working. Though a lot of it, Micah, and you like to say this line, and I really agree with it, which is this idea that sales cures all ills.
Yes.
And so we talk to advisors constantly, right? Obviously, we're advisors ourselves. We talk to our junior advisors. We talk to advisors in other practices. And a lot of problems when we peel back the onion come back to, hey, you're really just playing office all day.
Now, let's kind of dive into this a little bit, Jarvis. When I say sales cures all ills, this isn't necessarily just about making more money. The comment that's really broken down here is saying, are you being hyper-intentional about your time, or are you being self-destructive in your practice? Another way you could talk about playing office is you are self-destructive in your practice. That's kind of what it is, right? You're not doing things that benefit your clients, your team, or your family. Okay, well, if you're not benefiting them, then everything counts, right? Whether it counts for you or counts against you, everything counts. Therefore, it's destructive in this nature. And what I love about focusing on sales cures all ills is that it makes a productive thing that you're doing. You're saying, you know what? I need to get out there. I need to be talking with people. I need to help build things. I need to deliver more value to clients. I need to increase and I need to grow in that aspect of it. So this isn't just a money thing. It's saying, hey, I need to kick myself in the butt here and really be productive and add value.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that distinction, Micah. So right now we're using the term sales as shorthand for delivering massive value to new people, right? So this isn't about like how many more cans of soda pop can I sell to someone who's already overweight. This is how do I go out and deliver?
It's a billion-dollar industry, but whatever.
It is, yeah. And that's an industry, Steve Jobs said, hey, if you want to spend your life selling sugar water, knock yourself out, right? But for the listeners of this podcast, we're all committed to delivering massive value. And so what happens though is it's really hard to do that.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the one-page financial plan, though that is difficult in its own. I'm not talking about doing surge meetings, also difficult in its own. I'm talking about risking the discussion with another human being of, I would like to bring value to your life, and risking that they're going to say, no, thank you. No, thank you.
And you just nailed it right there, right? We got to really break this down that says, what is prospecting? What is sales? If you are not risking a no, then it's not sales. It doesn't count. Now, you can easily push back and say, whoa, Micah, you spend a lot of time playing online. You got a lot of online content, a lot of YouTube comment. You got shorts. You got all this other stuff going on, articles being created, every couple of weeks posting on your website. So you're telling me that that's playing office. Okay, well, that'd be a really fair pushback that's there. I am not going to say that's playing office because it does directly deliver results. It adds massive value to people, and then they come in and need help with financial planning and hire us, right? But I'm also not going to tell you that's prospecting. So those can be two different camps. And so I could say, hey, this is a great activity which can add a lot of value and can help in my prospecting activities, but that as alone is not prospecting. If I am not risking a no, it is not prospecting.
Yeah, we have to understand, right? Obviously, there's this expression, the sales funnel, right? And so the online content, plan your federal retirement, that is a step in the sales funnel. And that step can work, and it does work to some extent. But if you want to accelerate it, or if you really want to, I don't want to say guarantee results, but accelerate your results, you have to risk hearing a no. These are two sides of the same coin. If you want the chance to hear a yes, you have to risk hearing a no. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean you need to start cold calling people, though we do know advisors that are very successful with that. But even, Micah, with your PYFR, you're reaching out to your audience saying, hey, we're going to have this event. Would you like to attend this event? And then you're showing up at that event and saying, hey, would you like to meet with me? These are all chances to hear yes, which is also a risk to hear no.
I have one in 2 days. And you know what? And if you think that after doing all these events and whatnot, that you're going to go into them and you're going to be super confident and you're not going to have any head trash and you're not going to worry about, is anyone going to show up? Boy, you've dealt with that a lot better than I have, because I still have that head trash issue, right? When we plan an event, I know we need to do this. I know it adds value. We have so many phenomenal testimonials from people saying, oh my gosh, this is an amazing thing. But I still get a little bit of that head trash saying, holy crap, is anyone going to show up? I'm going to talk about this. Now, it's a webinar. It's not in person, which are really good, but I don't get to see my audience, right? And so I need to find a way to kind of work with them and build it. I still don't have a great aspect in that online presence just yet in doing webinars versus my in-person. I get a lot better response in an in-person class. I get to see my audience. I get to work them, right? I get to pull the questions out of them, which I absolutely love doing. It's different in an online environment. So, but even though I'm uncomfortable in doing it, I still have to do it. Well, I'm choosing to do it. I guess there's no have to, there's no gun to my head, right? I am making the choice to get up and to go do that because I want to deliver massive value and I want to help another 1 million federal employees with their retirement.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes back to this discomfort, right? And there's this old cliche, and it used to drive me crazy until I understood it, which is successful people do what everyone else is unwilling to do, right? And I hated being told that. And then the more successful people I know and the more successful I become myself, the more true that is. And this is where playing office becomes so nefarious, right? So we have this uncomfortable thing, and rejection, for whatever reason in our human psyche, is one of the most uncomfortable things we can do. I don't know why. Maybe some people think it's because we tie it to being attacked by a tiger or whatever it is, But then we say, well, you know what? Instead of prospecting, my profit margins are low. So instead of prospecting and delivering more value, what I probably need to do is renegotiate my copy machine contract. In fact, why don't I go and count the number, right? And we talk to advisors, right, Micah? You're laughing, right? We talk to advisors all the time who, they're doing $300,000 of revenue and they're saying, hey, what do you think I need to do? You need to prospect. Well, I have a Facebook account. How many times did you hear no this week? I don't know. A few. No. How many? Not a few. How many? 0. Okay. That's the problem. If you're not hearing no's, you're not going to get ahead in this business, in any business.
Jarvis, and sorry to interrupt, I would really add to that as well. There's kind of two aspects of this, right? There is the aspect of saying, hey, I'm aspirational. I'm growing my practice. Great. Don't experiment. Just do the hard things that work. Yeah. Then you get to a point that says, and I like to think that I'm here. Now, someone above me could come down and says, Mike, you're not even there. Still go back to doing the hard things. It says, I'm going to at least do these many hard things and to get these things done. When I've accomplished that, I want to experiment with these different things. And I want to see if there's a better way of doing this. But until I've done the hard things, I don't play. I don't experiment. I don't change things because the hard things just work. And it's risking the no. Right? Now, these aren't hard sales. It's not a timeshare presentation we're having to bring people into, but it still is a bit uncomfortable. Now, if you say, oh man, that's super easy. I do this all the time, etc. Great. Show me your calendar. Let me actually see your calendar. And how many times are you really doing this?
Yeah. And it's amazing how deceptive or how alluring playing office can be. I think we mentioned this a few weeks ago on the podcast. I had decided, in hindsight, an avoidance behavior, that what I needed to do is a whole entire new camera setup. And so I spent thousands and thousands of dollars buying new cameras and hiring experts and buying equipment and dozens and dozens and hundreds of hours, Micah, effing around with this stuff. And then one day I finally realized, and it was probably at your prodding, which is why you need a mastermind group. Wait a second. All of this is avoiding doing the hard work. All of this is avoiding hearing the no. If I had spent that time instead saying, hey, I'm going to just get on the phone with advisors and chat with them about their practice. I'm just going to get on the phone with prospective clients or centers of influence or whomever that may be. That would catapult my practice. But it didn't seem like that at the time. It didn't seem like I was making a conscious decision between prospecting and playing around with camera equipment. It seemed like, well, I have camera equipment. This is my highest and best use.
Yeah, it really is, right? I mean, you could really dive into it and focus it. Now, it doesn't matter what that is. It could be camera equipment. It could be updating your website. It could be social media. It could be writing articles on SEO, right? You could justify, and this isn't a justification question. You can justify all day long on how you spend your time and how you spend your money and how it's just the most amazing thing. I don't care about your justification. I care about the results. You did X activity. What Y result did it produce? That's what I'm going to grade you on. And that's how you should be grading yourself as well, right? I come up with these amazing, I think they're amazing ideas that I love to implement. And then the marketplace gets to step up and tell me how good this idea is and how bad it is. We just implemented one that we're probably going to kill in a couple of weeks because I thought it was an amazing idea. It was going to revolutionize a lot of the way that we interact with our prospects. And it's not delivering more value. It's putting up more roadblocks that we didn't see coming. And so there it was. I was experimenting, trying to make something better, and it's not. Now, I could latch onto this idea saying, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. I should just keep doing it. Or I could step back and look at the evidence and the results and say, it's not working. We're scrapping it and going back to the old way that we're doing it. That's the data that you need. And we're all going to make mistakes, but you got to drop that emotion side of it. You got to look at the results side of it and say, what do I need to do to deliver massive value? And the marketplace is going to tell you that.
Yeah, it's going to be real evidenced by your bank account and the value that you're delivering. I think, Micah, a tell of this as well is that you're doing activities that don't have a time cap on them, right? So if I'm prospecting and I'm saying, hey, I need to hear 10 no's a week, or I need to reach out to 10 centers of influence a week, or I need to follow up on 10 people that attended my webinar a week, that's a really defined measurement. If I say, hey, what I need to do is update my social media, and it's open-ended, that's a real good example that this is a prospecting avoidance. Now, if you say, hey, listen, every week I'm going to spend 2 hours, exactly 2 hours, posting to social media as part of my marketing campaign, and Micah, to your point, I'm going to measure my results. Awesome. That's great. As long as you're getting those calls in and it's confined to a set time. But as soon as you say, hey, I'm going to do that this week, and you end up spending 10 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours, whatever it is, playing office, now we have a big problem.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I would say, Jarvis, this is a really good thing of why you should be operating the perfect week. And that's the reason we created the perfect week with advisors. Now, we're still tweaking it a little bit, right? We've been running this thing for about 5-6 months. It's working pretty well. Then reality comes in and we got to tweak things a little bit. But the concept of running a perfect week calendar is knowing in advance what types of activities you need to do, then working with your team to fill those types of activities. So when it comes to great playing with social media, you have 7 minutes because that's how productive it is in your day. That's right. It. Right? Everything else is to know, here are the hard things that you need to do. And those are all stacked up in the morning. We had one of our team members come up to us and he was like, hey, I feel more productive in the afternoon. So I want to kind of, do these other activities first because they kind of get me excited. Then I want to go do these hard things later. And my answer is no, absolutely not. I see no evidence that actually works. So I was like, I really appreciate this open conversation. We're going to focus on doing what works though, and do the hard things first, because what's going to happen is those other activities are going to take up your entire day because you do not want to do the hard things. And so sure enough, he's doing these hard things first. And it's not always fun. Let's be super clear in that.
No, it's not. It's terrible.
But then you're like, hey, I'm getting better at it. I'm improving. Things are growing. And then we start seeing the fruits of our labor come from that. And then all of a sudden it's worth it. Still doesn't make it fun, but it makes it worth it to do those hard things. It's like doing a solid workout, right? I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go hit the tonal. I'm so excited to go work out. But when I'm done with the workout, I'm very grateful that I worked out every single morning. And that's the same thing with doing these hard things, is you become grateful that you've done them because of the results that they produce.
Something else that comes to mind in this, Micah, that takes both some of the sting out of the prospecting, but also makes it far more effective and just delivers more value, is this concept from Joe Polish, right? What's in it for them? So if I'm looking and I say, hey, I need to make 10 contacts a day or a week or whatever your number is, 10 a day would be a great number, and you're just calling to ask people for something, right? Whether it's a call or email, if I'm saying to the center of influence, hey, will you do me this favor? Will you send me this client? Will you pay attention to me? Will you give me your time? That's not delivering any value. And so of course those rejections are personal, right? You're asking that person for a personal favor and they're saying, no, I don't know you personally. I'm not going to give you that favor. But when I approach somebody and I'm approaching them to deliver value, Micah, right, with your PYFR videos, I'm trying to give value here. When I call a center of influence and I say, hey, I want to pay for your time, that's me giving value. When I call a prospective client that didn't become a client and I say, hey, just wanted to follow up. I know I mentioned these 3 things to make sure you did with anybody you worked with. Just wanted to make sure you got those taken care of because they're that important, right? If I'm looking and saying, hey, 10 opportunities each day to deliver value, it's A, much easier to do, and B, which is always the side effect, far more effective.
Yeah, it is, right? And we talked about this before. I love to set up games where I can win.
Always.
Why not? If I get to design the rules, why don't I design them where I'm going to win? So when I go into a prospect meeting, the goal of my prospect meeting is not to get hired. I know this sounds super crazy. The goal is to deliver massive value. Right now, when I go into that prospect meeting, I don't say, hey, great news today. I'm going to tell you we're going to deliver massive value. Why don't I use those terms with a prospect? Because they don't mean anything. I got to put context around this, right? I got to talk about it where it makes sense. I say, great news. What I want to do with you for the next hour we're going to spend together, I want to make sure we're focusing on answering your questions about your retirement, right? Yeah. Okay, now I've just set parameters on what massive value was. If we get to the end of this day and the end of the hour and I've answered their questions about retirement, they're going to say, Micah, this was a giant, great use of our time. It was fantastic. And I am so excited to spend this time with you because because we set those parameters. Again, this is an example of I want to set the rules where we can win. And a lot of time that's just communicating what those expectations are. Same thing when I produce content, right? I want to set those rules up so people doesn't say, man, this is a waste of time. As soon as they're seeing the content, they know what it's about. They know if it's going to apply to them, and then they can keep watching it if it is. And if it's not, they can go do something else. Them doing something else, leaving my website is totally fine. Everyone will leave your website. Everyone will leave your social media at some point. The question is, how are you engaging with them while they're there?
Yeah, those are really interesting points, Micah. And it's we also have to remember, like everything, it exists on a spectrum, right? Because we do run into advisors who they don't ever make the transition to demonstrating value and then charging what they're worth, right? So we talked to an advisor, and it comes to mind that was running into problems with DIY investors. So he'd get these DIYers in, and they would meet with him, and they would meet with him again and again and again and again, and they would never pay, and they would never become clients. And so there is a point where you need to then again, and so his problem was he wasn't risking the no. He wasn't risking the, hey, I've shown you that I can deliver value, I've demonstrated value, become a client or don't, right? And so this risking a no isn't just this initial like, hey, will you talk to me? And it's not just, hey, will you come into my office, or can I do a one-page financial plan for you? Every step along the way, there's spots where we have to take a chance to hear yes. And if we're waiting for someone else to volunteer the yes, maybe they'll get there eventually, but odds are they won't.
So one of the things you need to have with this is, what is your written prospect process for delivering value? Right? What is that written process that once someone comes into your office or calls your office, what's going to happen? How is your relationship manager going to handle that phone call? How are they going to set the appointment? What communication are you going to have with them between when they've called your office and when they come in for the appointment? When they come in for the appointment, what's the written game plan on all of the things that you're going to cover? Now, if you look at our written game plan and a prospect coming in, we have way too much information on there. Now, we're not going to cover it all, but I want to go into that meeting armed with as much value as I possibly can. Now, if we don't need it, right, because we run out of time where we really dive deep on one topic, then sweet, we're going to put that other stuff off later for a future conversation. But I want to go into that stacking the deck with as much value as I possibly can. And then, Jarvis, to your point, where's your call to action? Where are you risking that yes or no? When you got the 3 Ps, personal, productive, and profitable, right? That's our valuation with every client. Are they personal? Do we like them? Do we have a relationship? Can we get along? Are they productive? Another way of saying this, are they coachable? Can we add value to their situation? And are they going to follow our coaching recommendations? Third is profitable. Can we justify our fee? If I'm going to charge a healthy fee for the value, is the value I'm providing worth it? Right? Now, a lot of times this is subjective to their opinion, not yours, but I got to be looking at this side as well. Do they meet those 3 Ps? And then if they do, how do I move it to the next level? And I got to risk that yes.
Well, Mike, I love that you highlighted that you need to have a written process to follow. We've talked about this in regards to scheduling and surge meetings, right? If I were to take phone calls and be asked, hey, Matt, can I come see you on a Friday? Yeah, sure. Why not? How about Tuesday at 10 p.m.? Yeah, why not? Because I'm just accommodating like that, right? We've talked about that. That's why my team does all of the scheduling. Same with the prospect process. It's easy for me to lose my nerve in those meetings to ask for the yes, right? But I have this process, right? At the end of this meeting, I say, hey, would you like to work together, right? And that happens every time. It's not like, well, I'll ask on meeting 3 or maybe meeting 4. You know what? Meeting 7. Nope. It's just, this is the process. And here's what I say in each one. And it's written and I'm accountable for that. And my team is expecting that. And that's just how it has to go down. Otherwise, I'll get fear of rejection and I'll let that slide.
You know, Jarvis, I was talking with one advisor, and as we were going through it, they were doing a good job delivering value, but the client had never transferred over. They transferred over a little bit of assets, but 90% of the assets they still haven't transferred over.
Interesting.
I was talking to the advisor, and they were very frustrated that the client wasn't transferred. He's like, I just need to graduate. I just need to, they need to go on because I'm not doing it. It's like, well, that's one answer, but tell me what your meetings have been like. And it goes through the last couple meetings, and I'm like, show me where in your meeting, the last 3, you asked them to transfer their accounts. Well, there's a pause. And he says, I didn't. I said, so hold on a second. The client is doing everything you've asked them to do. You've never asked them to transfer the accounts. You said, well, but he was like, well, no, I said it would be more beneficial if it was at Schwab to help them, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, okay, so you skirted around something and you didn't ask the question and position why it's beneficial to them, why it adds more value, and you're irritated that they're not mind reading and doing this. And it was kind of this pause, like, And I'm like, yeah, you got to risk it, right? You know, some clients are intuitive and say, hey, I don't want to do this. Let's transfer everything over. I want you to take care of the whole thing. Those are some clients. Other clients are like, well, I don't know what the difference is between the letterhead. Okay, sure, I'll just keep it wherever, until we prompt them with saying, hey, where does it add the most value to transfer your accounts to? And then most of the time, they're super happy to do that because it's more beneficial to them. But if you do not ask, if you do not risk that yes, if you do not risk that no, and put it out there why it's beneficial to the client, you sure as crap can't be irritated that they didn't follow your believed recommendation that you never even articulated.
Yeah, unspoken expectations. Yeah, those harm every relationship. Micah, something else comes to mind with this written prospect process is making sure that you have a written prospect process that you have conviction in, right? And this was something I ran into early in my career, right? All of these experts would say, hey, here's how you're supposed to prospect. And so then I would try that and it wouldn't work. And then I would 100% blame the system. I'd say, oh, well, Dave, the expert, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Now, there's two issues here. One, Dave, the expert, didn't know what he's talking about. Otherwise, he'd be an advisor. The second issue is I never took ownership to reflect and say, wait, maybe there's something I'm doing. Maybe it's how I'm dressed. Maybe it's my body language. Maybe it's how I drew that, these different things. But once I found systems to implement by people that had the results I wanted, right? For me, it was Tom Gow before he passed away, right? For all of our Backstage Pass and Invictus members, it's this content that we've created inside there. I can look and I say, hey, I know that Micah's process is proven. I've seen his success. If I'm not getting good results from his process, it's probably on me. I need to keep working the process and I need to adjust me. And so that took away a whole area of excuse and blame, which is, hey, I don't know if this process worked. I know this process will work. I've seen it work. It's proven to work. If I keep working it, it will deliver results.
That's the huge thing right there, right? But you got to keep working it. You got to stay on top of these processes and do it. And you really got to look at this and say, all right, it's not just the process, right? It's the conviction that you're putting into it. And when you hit that roadblock, who are you going to reach out to? It says, hey, what step am I missing? Because Jarvis, a lot of the times when I followed someone else's process, I was like, dude, I'm following this thing to a T and it's not actually producing, it's not actually working. And then it would go back and I talk with them. It's like, well, you skipped this other step. Well, that step really didn't count. No, that step did count. That's why it was a step. So you chose to skip the step and now you're not getting the results. Okay, now I got to rewind the clock and go do all of those steps. So again, it's really important until you've mastered this, be careful about how much stuff you edit from someone else's process because you may not see why it's so critical to do every single piece. But if you go from a highly successful person, more than likely, whether it's intentional or accidental, maybe they didn't know why they were doing it, but every single one of those steps matter in delivering value.
Like this reminds me of a friend of ours who's in one of our masterminds, very, very, very successful advisor, very successful. And the other day on our text thread, he confessed, he said, guys, I just gotta be honest, like basically everything I've done in my practice is just what I learned from this other guy, this monster producer, even bigger than him. And he's like, hey, listen, I just found a guy who had the practice I wanted and I just did everything that he did. And I know that I look really smart, but I just gotta be honest, I just did what this guy did. And what's funny is we see
makes him a genius.
Yeah, makes him a genius. And he's laughing all the way to the bank and he's delivering incredible value to his clients, incredible value. But he just had the discipline. And here's really the key. He said, great, I know this system worked for this guy. I've seen his result. I'm going to follow it. And Micah, to your point, he didn't say, hey, you know what? I probably don't need to wear a suit on Tuesdays. That seems unusual. Or, hey, 37-point checklist probably can only be 5 points. Whatever it was, he just, no, I'm going to do this thing word for word, call for call, and he crushes it.
Boy, that's just it right there, Jarvis. Like so many times that we play off as an advisor recreating the wheel, right? Yeah. Stop friggin' recreating the wheel and just do it. Just operate it. Just go through that entire process. Yes, it's uncomfortable. And guess what? The wheel you create will be lumpy and uncomfortable too. But someone else already figured out most of the stuff. Go become an expert in that. Get your own house in order before you try to create something else.
The other thing that comes up here, Micah, that distracts all of us is a really good prospect process is really boring. It is just not exciting. You and I were even talking about this before the call. And a business mentor of mine one time, he said, Jarvis, listen, if you want excitement in life, go buy a dirt bike, which I did. He said, don't make your business exciting. Your business needs to be just a machine. It needs to be like a robot. It just, you pull the lever and this happens. And we get distracted, right? We say, boy, I've got it. For advisors listening that have very successful prospect processes, we start thinking, you know what I really need to do? I need to shake this thing up. I mean, it's making me so much money. It's working so well. Yeah, this is guilty. You know, the pot calling the kettle black here. It's really easy to say, boy, this is too boring. Call 10 centers of influence each week and offer to pay for their time. That's real boring. What if I start my own accounting firm? Guilty as charged.
we're going to put now 1,000 times more energy into an unknown event versus this consistently works, right? So it's about doing the consistent things. Speaking of consistent things, Jarvis, this podcast is all about action items and taking steps. So what is one thing our listeners could do this week, take action on in order to improve their practice?
I've got to say the most important thing related to the prospect process is keep a Post-it note on your desk or wherever you're working from, and just put a little tally mark on there each time you take a chance at hearing a yes. That could be a yes from a prospect, from a center of influence, from a client, from whomever, where you're risking hearing a yes. And just tally those, and I will confess you'll be shockingly disappointed how often you're taking those chances, and then just turn that up. So if you say, well, I did it one time this week, great, go to 2, go to 5, go to 10, go to 15, go to 20. That will transform your practice in ways you can't imagine.
Jarvis, I love it. I'm going to say you got to have a written process, right? You think you know what the process is in your mind. I want you to write it out and give it to someone else on your team and have them review it. Are you missing any steps? What's different that's inside of there, right? Not adding things that would be, it'd be nice to do this. That's not what I'm asking for. What steps are you actually doing in your process, and how consistent are you in those? But it starts with step 1, writing it down.
Last thing I would say is, again, and this is a bit self-serving, learn from the experts. Mike, I know that on the Perfect RIA website, we have available an estate planning course that you did. This is a great time in the summer to get ready for that. This is something that you and I are going to be focusing on in Fall Surge. Go buy that estate planning class and get brushed up on estate planning. Right, attend the RTS Tax Summit in the fall. That way you are learning from people who really do it, who have the practice you want, and then you can implement that without trying to make it sexier. Just implement it.
Just implement. Jarvis, and that's really the solid thing, right? Talk about value add. We talk a lot about taxes. You want to talk about estate planning as a value add. Clients absolutely love it because it's something that pertains to every single one of them. It's one of the things they love about taxes. It pertains to every single one of us. So does estate planning, right? Sometimes retirement distributions don't apply to every single one of us. But guess what? Everyone's going to die and everyone has to pay taxes. So you need a great understanding of how that works. The estate planning class is a great way to start.
Yeah, it really is. And not to side tangent on that, because so much of what's critical in estate planning is knowing how to articulate it to clients, which I guess that's what's critical about the entire financial planning process, right? Is how to articulate it. So, well, to all our listeners, remember, it's what you do that counts. It's what you implement. Micah, thank you so much. And for everyone else, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.